Okay, now that we've got this all set here, ready to go, make sure you're going to be sighting where the little dimples are, and using the grub screws on there where the little dimples come in. This is where you're going to be starting the motor. Hex is on the top. The longest part here of the starter coupling is going towards the top. There's a little bit of play here for this, and now we are going to put this in the housing. Housing is this little plastic part. Now when we put it in here, we want to make sure we put some shoe goo or some CA or something in here so that the bearings are sitting in place. Otherwise the bearings can be moving and it could melt this down. So what I am going to do is use a little bit of CA, line the inside of these, because this is where the bearings are going to go. These guys in here. So it's moving freely. Same on this side. Just line these, a little bit of CA or shoe goo or whatever. Just you want to make sure those bearings aren't going to be moving around. Make sure these hex bolts are in here as well. Put those together. Everything's moving nice and smooth. Okay, final thing you're going to do with the clutch here is these little socket screws here, 3x8 millimeter, like it calls out here, and we're just going to clamp these here. There's going to be one side that will fit the hex bolt, and then on the other side, so these guys have a little plastic tapping material, so no need to use any thread lock. Side here. And just remember, this is plastic stuff here, so you want to make sure you don't kill the plastic or you're going to start having problems. Just get it nice and tight. Same thing on the other side. Put it on there. You're going to screw it in, and then we'll have the clutch ready to go. Okay, moving on to the next step. You're going to want to pull out bag 600 NB6, and it's going to have the frame in it. And as always, don't forget this step. Make sure to get some sandpaper, some fine sandpaper, and just sand down the edges for the whole frame. It'll take a little while. You got to go through, kind of do both sides. This stuff is just stamped, on the manufacturing floor, so the edges aren't cleaned off. You don't want to get cut, and you don't want to cut any wires while you're in the process of running wires through stuff. So make sure you go through. Also, maybe wear a face mask. Sometimes it'll be messy. You'll get some black stuff all over your hands, but you don't want to breathe it in. It's carbon fiber. Carbon fiber conducts electricity. So be sure to go through all the little spots, sand it down, and prep just every single part of your frame. Okay? Don't forget to do that. Now that we've got our frames all sanded down and safe, we're going to start just following along with the manual here. Pull out all these pieces, start assembling the frames. You should do one side, start putting the stuff on, do the other side. I'll break down the steps one at a time, but most stuff we're going to have is going to be in the 600 NB1 G75 bag. And there were also, as you probably noticed, some screws and stuff left over in the bag from the previous step. Put those to the side. You're going to be using those on the frame as well. It's more than just what's in these bags that are listed here. So don't worry if you had extra screws from the last step. It's all good. So we've got the front. Inside we've got some frame hardware, other stuff here, elevator, servo arms, bearing blocks, hardware. So we're going to separate the hardware, put that to the side, and start assembling the frame one piece at a time. Alright. Okay, next thing we're going to pull out are this little guy out of the bag set. And this thing's completely geometrically identical all the way around, so it doesn't really matter how you do it. Pull out these two washers. You just want to make sure you've got the right washer, so make sure you double check. Right down here it says the washer that you're trying to go for is 3 by 4.8 by 0.3 millimeters. So take out your calipers, make sure the diameter is 4.8 millimeters, and it was. Inner diameter is 3 millimeters. These are the two washers that you want to pull out. And you're also going to pull out these ball links. One is one of the shorter ones without the skirt, and one is the longer one with the skirt. There's a couple other ones in the package. We'll use those later. And there's also these 5 little guys, these little pieces of hardware. They're all identical, they're all the same thing. So you just pull out one of those. You're going to be using that. Then there's also one socket button head screw, 3 by 12 millimeters. So make sure you grab the right one. Again, measure it with the calipers, make sure you've got the correct size. So you're going to put on the washer and this guy, and a washer again. And then we're going to put a little bit of thread lock on our finger. Okay, getting the right hex. Don't forget the thread lock. You don't want to get it on the bearing, so just make sure you do this carefully. You might also want to put some thread lock inside the hole here. I'm going to just put a dab in there. Put it in the... Okay, once you've got this arm on here, you're going to screw this in. You've got the washer. You want to make sure you don't want you want to make sure you don't screw it in too tight, too firm, and it'll get all locked up. But you want to make sure it moves freely. So almost hand tight is about right. And then these guys are going to go on the tops here, and then you'll have that part ready to go. Okay, next thing we're going to do is put these little hardware pieces, the rest of these, on the frame. We're going to put them on the inside, so you have to know which side of the frame is inside. We've got a smaller diameter, bigger diameter here. Okay, so that's the outside and the inside. And these little parts are going to be going on the inside, so from where the smaller diameter is, putting them here, and you're just going to slide them right on. Will kind of snap into place. Same thing over here. Make sure you're putting it on the inside. and you're going to pull out 8 of these 3 by 8 millimeter hex screws and 8 of these little specialty washers. So we're going to make sure we put thread lock, make sure we clean them all off, and then put thread lock on each of them, and then screw them into these guys to hold them into the frame. Okay, so after that, we'll come back and put on the canopy mounts. Okay, next part we're going to move on to, now that we've got these guys all in here, thread locked nice and tight on the inside. Make sure the outside has the larger diameter here compared to the inside. And on the right frame, you want to make sure that it's the frame for the right side. Once you put them together, compare them to the manual. The open end will be in the front. Back part where the gas tank is going to be is right here. So on the right side, same way that we fit those guys in, we're just going to take this guy, put it in this hole right here, and make sure the smaller ball link is the one that will face the outside. And same thing, we're going to put some thread lock on some 3 by 8 hex screws, run them through the specialty washers, put those in here to hold this in place, and then I'm going to put these bearing blocks in place. The align this part with the case, you'll see there's two sides of the bearing block. One, you can see the screws. Other side, you can see just this little thing with some writing. So top one, we're going to make sure the writing is facing out, and then down here it's going to be reversed, inverted. It's going to be upside down. So towards the outside, writing on the outside, or you just think writing up top and screws down below. So we're going to use some of these socket button head collar screws. They're the 3 by 8 millimeter. There's lots of them. I think they're mostly in their own separate bag. So we're just going to do one side for now. Get those bearing blocks in place, and we'll be right back to review and check out what we've got. Okay, just for a little review, now we've got the bearing blocks put on here with the writing up and down. We've got the canopy mounts. The package came for me. This thing already had the screws that were necessary in there. Be sure to use thread lock in those. Thread lock in these guys. There's going to be some larger diameter holes, and the end of the screw will go through that hole. Make sure you've got everything lined up. There's holes for everything to fit perfectly. Thread lock these guys, and we've got the second half of the frame ready to go. Now what we're going to do is move on to, we'll put this little guy at the bottom. Again, another geometrically equal shape, so you can put it in anyway. This one's going to go down here. You know, make sure you check the manual and use the correct size socket button collar head screws, you know, similar, like the same ones that you use here. We're going to put that on there, and we're also going to put the motor, the engine mount in here. Put these guys on the edge, and you'll notice also there's a part here. There's a thinner part, so you can see there's flat like that. You don't want the flat side. You want to put it on the end right here. And the screws that you use to put the engine mount pieces on will be 10 millimeters, a little bit longer than the 8 millimeters that you put into the side here. So we're going to put those on, and the bearing block, and we'll come and review again in a little bit.